The history of culture begins in ancient times, then comes the Dark Middle Ages, when monks burn witches, and today, in modern Europe and North America, we have fortunately left all that behind us. Reason has prevailed. We can look forward to a golden future and also to a new iPhone every year. Everything is getting better, fairer and more just. That's progress after all, isn't it? As early as the early 20th century, doubts about this opinion were being voiced. What if culture is relative? We have nothing to do with antiquity, and the classical structure of antiquity, the Middle Ages and the modern era does not correspond to historical facts at all. Or even more importantly, what if our culture is not constantly improving, but is already decaying and will face its end in just a few centuries? This is the view expressed by Oswald Spengler in his over 1,000-page philosophy of history, The Decline of the West, which, upon its publication in 1918, became perhaps the most discussed book of its time. In this book, Spengler convincingly demonstrates on the basis of diverse and meticulously researched characteristics that all cultures go through certain cycles at all times. They are born in a figurative sense, experience youth and old age, and finally, like every living organism, die. This applies not only past European antiquity or Babylonian civilization, but also to today's Western world. According to Spengler's analysis, the culture of Europe and North America is already in the process of decline and is about to come to an end. For Spengler, history is not something rational or linear, as is the case with Marxism, many liberal philosophers and the monotheistic religions, but something living and fateful. Inspired by Goethe and Nietzsche, Spengler shows in his comparative analysis that every culture goes through similar phases before it comes to an end after around 1,000 years. Moreover, according to the philosopher of history, every culture has its own soul, which makes it unique and incomparable. Spengler calls the soul of ancient culture Apollonian, that of Arab culture magical, and that of Western culture Faustian, in reference to Goethe's novel. The Apollonian man of antiquity lives sensually in the present. The magical man perceives life as a struggle between creation and destruction, spirit and soul, or good and evil. Western man, on the other hand, strives towards the infinite, which is proven by the will, the discovery of America, and space rockets. The different souls make it impossible for people to really understand the respective motives, art, or even the mathematics of other cultures. For the Apolline man, the number is a quantity he calculates geometrically. For magical people, it is indeterminate. They calculate using algebra. And for the Faustian man, numbers are functions. His mathematics is analysis. With the help of morphology, the study of shapes and forms, Spengler identifies 8 advanced civilizations that differ significantly in terms of time and characteristics. The Egyptian culture, the Babylonian culture, the Indian culture, the Chinese culture, the ancient Greek-Roman culture, the Arab culture since the birth of Christ, the Aztec culture, and the Western culture in which we live right now. Even the perception of historicity is only ever culturally conditioned. For Spengler, there is no such thing as an abstract history of humanity, just as there is no real understanding of the attitude to life of other cultures. Nevertheless, they can be compared with each other in terms of the philosophy of history. Napoleon lived in his cultural period simultaneously or homologously with Alexander the Great. Immanuel Kant is the same as the ancient Plato or the Chinese philosopher Confucius, and Buddha is the same as Christ. The Greek Ionic takes place simultaneously with the Baroque period. Archimedes and Gauss are contemporaries, and Hannibal correspondent to the First World War. Even the cities of Alexandria, Baghdad and Washington gain importance in a phase of decadence and urbanization at the same cultural time. Using this methodology, Spengler attempts to predict the future of our history and analyzes that the West has already entered the final cultural stage of decadent civilization and will now sink slowly, insidiously, not theatrically like an ocean liner. From Spengler's perspective, the term completion is just as appropriate for the end of a cultural period and does not sound quite as pessimistic as decline. This clarification is important, as Spengler had to defend himself against the negative interpretation of his main work as a prophecy of doom, especially after the defeat in the First World War, which was a catastrophe for many Germans. In Western civilization, as with the end of other declining cultures, individual inorganic cosmopolitan cities are now becoming important, in which the remnants of Faustian life are becoming increasingly diluted. People are becoming more and more irreligious, materialistic, amoral, and are focusing on entertainment instead of art. Imperialism, Caesarism, and the capitalist money economy mean that some aspects of our culture can still survive, but their end is already certain. This can be observed in other cultures. The last world mood of Indian culture has been Buddhism since 500. That of ancient man has been Hellenistic Roman Stoicism since 200. For magical culture, it is the practical fatalism in Islam since 1000, and for the West, it is the ethical socialism of the 19th century. So what to do in times of decline? For Spengler, our only option is to endure the approaching end with dignity. With this view, Spengler is still considered a cultural pessimist today, although he always described himself as a realist. Progressive optimists are dreamers. Although Spengler, as an anti-democrat, and held a high esteem for the fascist Mussolini, he was not a national socialist. He downright despised racial ideology and increasingly distanced himself from the system. When Spengler died of a heart attack in 1936 at the age of almost 56, there were even rumors that he had been murdered by the Nazis. Whether Spengler was ultimately right and how and when the West will actually perish remains to be seen. In the event that we are already in the midst of our decline, Spengler proclaims the right attitude and the right way to deal with it in the final words of his work, Man and Technics. We are born into this time and must bravely follow the path to the destined end. There is no other way. Our duty is to hold on to the lost position without hope, without rescue, like that Roman soldier whose bones were found in front of a door in Pompeii, who, during the eruption of Vesuvius, died at this post because they forgot to relieve him. That is greatness. That is what it means to be a thoroughbred. The honorable end is the one thing that cannot be taken from a man.